Hello, and welcome to our ACEDS webinar. We are very, very lucky to have two of the most experienced eDiscovery practitioners with us today to talk about one of the new and emerging areas that's been vexing many of us. At how do you complete discovery with Office 365? We've got some eDiscovery software integrated in there. We've got eDiscovery platforms that need to leverage it. And so this webinar today is going to have Johannes Scholtes, the Chief Strategy Officer of ZyLAB, and Rachi Messing, the Senior Program Manager for Microsoft, walk through a very specific scenario so that you can get an idea of how this works. This is a product showcase, so you will hear about actual products as well. So Johannes Scholtes, Chief Strategy Officer for ZyLAB, has been working in information for retrieval and systems for decades now, and he is the extraordinary the extraordinary chair in text mining at the Artificial Intelligence Group with the Department of Data Science and Knowledge Engineering at the University of Maastricht, in addition to being the founder of ZyLAB. And Rachi Messing is a Senior Program Manager for Microsoft, and he's providing guidance and training in implementation and deployment, and he's drawing on experience back as far as Merrill. And he's come through Discover Ready and Equivio. So I'm very, very pleased that these two gentlemen will be talking us through the process. And without further ado, the agenda, and Jan.
Yes, Mary, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm very happy to be here at ACEDS. We have a lot of participants today. And I'm also very happy that Rachi joined us from Microsoft to discuss how ZyLAB and Microsoft work together in the field of eDiscovery. Now we have a short agenda for today. First, we'll look at Microsoft Office 365, the market and the developments. We'll briefly touch the different use cases of eDiscovery, which goes well beyond just the federal rules of civil procedure these days. And then we'll discuss the Office 365 as architecture, what can be done with, from a point of view of eDiscovery and information governance and machine learning in Office 365, and then how we can complement that with some of the functionality of ZyLAB, and also how we can run it in a very, very nice platform which we call Azure, Microsoft Azure, which has given us at ZyLAB tremendous benefits over many other deployment types. Then we'll talk a little bit about the native eDiscovery in Office 365, and we'll go in more detail there, and we'll talk about how ZyLAB can then link into this Microsoft environment. So let me take you to the first slide. What we see is that Microsoft Office 365 is beating Google and many other cloud solutions in enterprise adoption. This is a quote from Gartner. We see it everywhere. Last year there was already a major breakthrough in a number of Office 365 edits all around the world, and yeah, the end of last year and this year, it's like almost everybody is going to 365, not just in the software business, but also in IT services, finance. For instance, a lot of regulators have approved the Microsoft O365 platform also for sensitive financial information. And we see a great move from the market from on-premises to Office 365 cloud. There are still a lot of on-premise installations and deployments, however. It's still the majority of the worldwide Exchange mailboxes, but it's changing very rapidly. As you can see here, last year about 75% of all the mailboxes were still on premises, and 25%, so 27% actually to be accurate, were on hosted Exchange mailboxes. Now, I think that by now this probably already has changed, because more and more organizations that we talk to have moved to the O365 platform for many reasons, from efficiency reasons, cost efficiency, and often it's even more secure than having an Exchange server somewhere in a filing or in a cabinet in your office. The Office 365 and Azure environment is much more secure and much more professionally secured. So having said all that, we also see a major move of interest for eDiscovery into this Office 365 data collections, but also to run it in the Azure environment, which we'll talk a little bit later. Now, what kind of use cases are we talking about in eDiscovery? Now, we all know that eDiscovery principal application has always been the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, helping people to discover, collect, identify, discover, collect, process, review, and share information related to eDiscovery. Now, most of this information is still in mailboxes, although it is shifting rapidly also to other cloud locations and mobile devices. But mailboxes is where parties always go to first. Then it's file shares and maybe project information from SharePoint. And all of that stuff these days is in Office 365. So Office 365 is a major source for eDiscovery investigations or data collections. Now, next to the very strict Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, which applies primarily to any company who is doing business in the US directly or indirectly, there is a lot of similar use cases like litigation and arbitration, where you do not follow the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure exactly, but you kind of do very similar things. Answering and dealing with regulatory requests from SEC, EPA, FINRA, other regulators. They are being handled in a very similar way as it is in normal eDiscovery. And what we've seen over the years is that also for government agencies, public records requests or FOIA requests, handling those is taking them a lot of resources, and the process there again is very similar. As we've discussed here at ASETS before, at another webinar where we talked about FOIA and public records requests, we compared eDiscovery with FOIA processes, and we showed that there is a huge similarity. There are some small differences, especially in the naming and in the reporting, but a lot of it is very similar. And a lot of these public organizations, of course, also use Office 365. So also for Office 365 and FOIA, is a very closely related different items. Internal investigations after an incident or a threat or some kind of disruption in an organization may be related to Foreign Corruption Practice Act or maybe related to fraud. It's very related to eDiscovery. It's the same trick. You have to find relevant documents, review them, maybe redact them, and then disclose them. And another use case is related to M&A in the field of merger and acquisitions, collecting data from mailboxes, file shares, is becoming a more and more real eDiscovery use case. A lot of contracts, a lot of relevant documents reside on file shares or in SharePoint, or maybe even in the mailbox from the CFO or the CTO or anybody who signed that. And then these documents then suddenly are important for an M&A process, or if you want to sell your company, you suddenly, or assets, you suddenly have to find all these documents. That's very similar to an eDiscovery process. And the whole due diligence part, and then the disclosing of the data towards a virtual data room looks very similar to eDiscovery, including the redaction of sensitive and confidential information. Very related, similar related use case there is handling the second requests under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Antitrust Improvement Act. You cannot just merge companies if you want to merge them, especially if you have a dominant market position. You will have to ask permission. You have to answer questions and dealing with these what they call second requests. Okay, so the handling of second request is also a huge eDiscovery use case that we see where we're also collecting a lot of information from mailboxes and 365 as being a major type of application. Okay, I would like to give it now to Rachi, and so Rachi can explain how with all this information is dealt in the Office 365 Gartner. Without further ado, Rachi, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So, as mentioned, the growth of Office 365 over the last few years has been incredible. And you know, in our latest reported numbers, we're up to over 85 million active commercial users. The amount of data that's in Office 365 is massive, and users are looking at how do they go ahead and can they move their data into Office 365. So when we start talking to clients about Office 365 and the productivity tools, we start off by looking at what they have on premises. That can be their Exchange servers, SharePoint, their actual file shares, user laptop, My Documents, things like that, as well as their third-party archives. Because one of the big pieces within Office 365, one of the big advantages, is that the users within the various different tools, so Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, et cetera, they get unlimited storage. And users and IT wants to take advantage of that unlimited storage. So they are not only looking at what can they do in terms of possibly getting rid of quotas and how are they allowing their users to be more productive by allowing them to store more, but they're also looking at their archives that they have on premise. And they're saying, okay, can we move these archives into Office 365? And if we do, what are the various different tools that we're going to have available to us in order to manage that data? And we're seeing more and more of these archives, the email archives, the data archives, being moved into Office 365, into the archives because of that fact that the infrastructure is managed by Microsoft. It's in a trusted, secure environment, and it gives the users access to the data in ways that they haven't had before. And part of that comes because once we start talking about the data, then I can go ahead and I can start looking at bringing together data that's not just Microsoft-based. I can look at how do I bring together all kinds of other pieces of data, bring it all into one place where it can be managed from a compliance perspective all at one time. IT and compliance officers and legal are looking at Office 365 as an opportunity to not just handle many of their eDiscovery needs, but also how can they apply various different records management and overall compliance needs to all of their data at once. Now, we know that not all data is going to be in Office 365, which is part of why we are working together with partners in how they are managing that data and some of the things that they're doing to bring together Office 365 and non-Office 365 data together. But the key thing is that once the data is in Office 365, it allows us to move into our in-place eDiscovery workflow. And the key piece here is that the data remains in place. As opposed to traditional eDiscovery workflows, which would involve collection and preservation notices going out, collecting the data, making copies of that data, having to index it in various different tools, we take an approach where the data stays in place the entire time. So as I'm creating email, as I'm going ahead and creating documents in SharePoint, in my OneDrive, any data that's being created or that's being migrated into Office 365, that data is able to stay in place. And when I put a preservation, whether that be from a policy perspective on a proactive basis, using some of our retention tools that allow you to set policies across all of your users or against specific sets of users in order to say that certain data has to be kept. So you might have your financial documents or documents that meet certain criteria that it's going to go ahead and say that we have to keep that data for 7 years. Or it might be in the case of eDiscovery where I've got an actual litigation hold that has to be applied to that data, and we're going to go ahead and say that that data is going to stay on hold until that hold is removed. Either way, the data is preserved in place. So when a user goes ahead and deletes their data, that's fine. When they go ahead and empty the recycling bin, that's fine. We don't disrupt the productivity workflow of the information worker at all. They are able to continue working exactly how they're used to working. But on the back end, all of that data is preserved. All of the metadata is preserved. Everything about that data is going to be preserved with full fidelity. And when you compare it to some of the journaling techniques that have been used in the past for accomplishing similar things, it's much more complete. Because, especially in Exchange, where we're able to apply this to an entire mailbox, it means all of the content in the mailbox, no matter what it is. Your contacts, your calendar items, draft items, everything stays within the mailbox and is preserved in place within that mailbox, which means that when it comes time to actually now perform eDiscovery searches, the data is actually already indexed because the entire email inbox or their SharePoint sites or their OneDrive or their Skype IMs, whatever it might be, or any of the outside data that's been pulled into the archives, all of that data, as soon as it touches the system, is automatically indexed and is available for search. So we enable in-place search against the live environment. Now that does mean that there are some considerations that you have to take into account when you're doing these types of searches, especially when you're doing enterprise-wide searches, because you have the ability to search across hundreds of thousands or even million-plus mailboxes at a time. Well, I need to remember that if I'm doing that against a live system where the data is not necessarily on hold for everyone, data is changing. New emails are coming in, emails are being deleted. I have to take that into account and consider what I'm doing when I'm doing these types of searches and how I want to make sure that that data is preserved when necessary. But either way, that data is available for the search. We see over 20 million eDiscovery searches taking place a month, and that's been growing. That's our last published numbers. Those numbers continue to grow, where every single day we've got millions plus searches taking place against data where whether it be IT administrators, whether it be the investigators, whether it be the attorneys coming in to be able to execute these searches. And another big trend that we're seeing is the collaboration between outside counsel and the corporate legal departments and corporate IT, where because it's within the cloud environment, you can securely give outside counsel access into this environment to allow them to perform the searches for you, or you can allow your service providers to come in and perform searches for you. So we're seeing that collaborative approach take place in the back and forth in sharing the results and making sure that the searches are on target. It is really a trend that's been growing over the last year and a half within the environment. So once that data is searched, we're able to go ahead and move it through. As some of you may know, Microsoft acquired Equivio 2 years ago, which is part of the team that I was a part of. And we have integrated in the analytics tools from Equivio, as well as some of the advanced searching tools to be able to actually analyze the data provide additional information about the data, organize the data in different ways using things like email threading in place, identifying unique content, near duplicates, predictive coding in place against the data. So that way I don't have to wait until I've already exported the data. I can go ahead and run my predictive analytics and run all of my other analytics to help me to understand and reduce that data set in place prior to the exports. And then, right now, today, that data can be exported out into various different review tools that our partners have. So we export the data out in formats that are able to be loaded into almost any review tool, but then we have various different partners like ZyLAB that will actually build in various different integrations to be able to actually keep that data in place in the cloud, be able to access the data, and be able to make use of and take advantage of all of the analytics that the users get. And one of the big things is that all of these tools are included in Office 365 with the user's licensing. So as the users are using their licensing, whether they're on, anytime they're on an enterprise license agreement, then they have the ability to go ahead and use the preservation and the searching tools. And if they're on what's called an E5 license, which is the highest level of licensing, then they get their advanced eDiscovery analytics as well. But those tools are just part of their subscription, and they're able to make use of them in order to help with all of the various different analytics to help me reduce that data set, get it into the formats that I need it, and get it into the review tools as quickly as possible. Underlying this entire workflow is our complete auditing. So the auditing goes hand in hand with the eDiscovery workflow. Every action is audited. We're able to make sure that that data is understood, and we also offer a management API that can allow you to, as a corporation or as a service provider or software vendor that may want to do other things with the analytics information and the auditing information, to download that information directly to be able to do things. We've seen a lot of our partners doing really cool things in terms of correlating various different audit events with the data itself that's coming out of the eDiscovery workflow. So this is the overall workflow and life cycle that the data uses and that the data flows through when using our Office 365 eDiscovery tools. So within the eDiscovery side, again, the key points to keep in mind are that the indexes are always created. I don't have to go ahead and create indexes for sets of data. They are automatically created against the data sets. They are live, they are up to date, and they allow me to do all of the kind of standard full eDiscovery searching that I need to do. So proximity searching, wildcards, being able to build out complex Boolean searches, all of those different things that allow me to go ahead and build out those searches and get some analytics information about it, even just on the searches themselves, to help me understand what my searches are hitting, what the data looks like, and what I potentially want to do with that data as I move forward. When I'm ready to actually export the data out, I've got various different options. I can export the data out natively in PST format, or in the folder structure that the data was contained within OneDrive or within SharePoint, allowing me to then move that data into a processing tool, or in a lot of cases we see still that there are still plenty of corporations that are keeping data within their walls, not using review tools, and they just will load that data up into Outlook or go through that data manually on really small investigations. And in order to help with that, we've also added the ability to export the data out in a processed format with all of the analytics information, but you get it with an Excel that I can use for further filtering to sort and understand what the native information is, and as well as being able to see things like the themes and the clusters and things like that. And then, of course, we have the last, which is kind of the standard full eDiscovery lifecycle, which is the ability to export that data into the review tools by our technology partners, which the key there is that the data is going to get there a lot faster than it would get there through kind of the standard collection and integration path that we typically see. And we also have a lot of things within the advanced eDiscovery toolset in terms of being able to identify what the documents are. And one of the things that is really nice within Office 365, because of the fact that it is a cloud software as a service platform, that you are able to go ahead and we are continuously rolling out new features. We've got a whole list of things that are on their way. Things like the ability to OCR data in place is being released in early preview this month. So that's just an example of one of the things that helps to enable the advanced eDiscovery workflow, as well as some additional searching and analysis tools. And you don't have to wait till IT gets around to upgrading the tools or until your provider might be running on an earlier version. We are always making sure that your system is up to date, that it has the latest and greatest tools available for you to use within the system. So on the auditing, just to give a sense of the scale of some of the things that are happening within the auditing environment, we have over 1 billion events collected daily. We've got all kinds of different events tracked, specifically on the eDiscovery side. Every search, every hold, every execution of a search, who the search was against, all of the different information about the search, all of that information, as well as who accessed the data itself, who was going into mailboxes, everything there is captured and is correlated within the Security and Compliance Center with the eDiscovery information in order to enable our users to be able to truly understand what is going on. And that is all brought together, including data that's coming from Azure. So tools such as ZyLAB that have been built into Azure can take advantage of the unified auditing pipeline to include their information there as well, where then I can set policies to actually give me alerts when certain things happen. I can go ahead and export that data out to keep it for longer term usage and auditing requirements. I've got the ability to bring all of that different data together and make sure that I am capturing the entire eDiscovery workflow within my audit trail for defensibility purposes. So again, the auditing is a major piece within Office 365. It allows the users to really know exactly what's happening, to understand what's happening, to have trust in what is happening, and that even though, yes, now I'm dealing in a much bigger type of environment in many cases, I still can have that control and still have the comfort level of knowing exactly who within my environment is touching this data and who is actually utilizing the various different tools that have been made available. So with that, I will turn it back over.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachi. Very clear. So I want to pick it up here from where Rachi left it. So I want to talk about how we can then take the remainder of the data out of the Office 365 environment and then combine it with information that you may still have on premises or in other cloud locations, and then take that all into the rest of the eDiscovery process, where you have to do the other analysis or other specialized tasks, including review and legal productions. So before I go there, I would like to talk a little bit about one of the major problems that we see in eDiscovery, and that's the fact that you never really know in advance how much data you have. You never know what type of data and what type of processing is required, and you never know exactly what kind of workflow and iterations you will have. During an eDiscovery process, you will constantly be confronted with new users, new situations, new issues, other parts that you have to investigate, and this makes it very hard to predict how much resources you need, and for instance, what type of resources do you need? How many gigabytes do you need to be able to process in a particular way? You never know it, and it's very, very hard to predict. So one of the things that you really need in eDiscovery is kind of intelligent load balancing and resource allocation to prevent bottlenecks and deal effectively with what we call the data wave in eDiscovery. This is, can you make me the presenter again, Rachi? Or forward the slide? Yeah, thank you very much. Now, so what I would like to do is I would like to talk about 3 topics. The first topic is how we can deal with this data wave by using the Microsoft Azure architecture. Then I want to show how we can integrate with 365 and also how we can integrate with the on-premises Exchange and other situations. Because in the next 10 years, the reality is that we'll probably live in a hybrid world where part of it is in the cloud, in Office 365, and a lot of other data is either still in legacy systems or in on-premise solutions from Microsoft Exchange. And when you're involved in an investigation or in eDiscovery, you need to deal with all the data sources if you like it or not. So let's start with Azure and Office 365. We feel very similar to like Microsoft, what is in the cloud should stay in the cloud. There's no reason to download information first from the cloud, then do some eDiscovery work and then upload it again to another location. So what we've done is we have developed our software in such a way that our architecture flawlessly and easily fits together with the Azure virtual machine architecture. And what we can do is we can not only easily connect to all kinds of Office 365 resources, we can also dynamically spin on and spin off additional resources in Azure without the need to reinstall the ZyLAB software or to reallocate or move the data around. And this is a very powerful feature that allows us to deal very effectively with the data wave that I just described in eDiscovery, the unpredictable data wave. We can also deal with Azure blobs, so we can collect data directly from Azure blobs. Now, you may not have heard from Azure blobs, but Azure blobs are locations to which you can upload data really, really fast. So if you do have some on-premise resources, you can upload them there, and then we can directly collect from those Azure blobs, making getting data into the system like really easy and really fast. And then of course, by doing this, we can also integrate either directly with on-premises resources, so we can directly collect from your mailboxes on-premises or from other locations, other cloud locations. And there's different ways how we can do that. And let me tell you a little bit more about the Azure Scalability. So what you see here on the left typically is an architecture where there's a number of machines in Azure that can be allocated. So you can, for instance, in this case, allocate 9 processors or 9 servers for processing and 1 server for review. Especially processing can be very CPU intensive if you have to deal with more complex analytics and data that needs to be deduplicated in a very complex way. Now, what we can do is we can allocate those machines, and what you see here, there's 3 of the machines, the review and the 2 other servers are dark blue, meaning that they are active. The other machines are just switched off, they're spinned down, as we call it, and you don't use them. Now, if you don't use them, you don't pay for them in Azure. So you can allocate as many machines as you want. As long as you don't need them, you just switch them off. And this is also something we see a lot in eDiscovery. In eDiscovery, it could be that 1 month you have like a lot of cases, the next month you have very little cases. So if you have a very expensive infrastructure to deal with these peaks, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Now, with the availability in Azure to spin those machines down, if you don't need them, you can perfectly align yourself with the flow of data in an eDiscovery process. And here on the other one I've shown you what we can do is if you do not have enough resources, just spin on a couple of machines and then without the need to reinstall or do something with the data, our software will automatically start processing faster and automatically deal with the data faster so you can still make your deadlines. What we can also do in Azure is create a high availability environment. So instead of having duplicate servers on premises, we can actually create a system, for instance, in region 1, where there's an active environment, and then we can do we can use something which we call geo-replication, and then in region 2, which can be in another state, or maybe if you want that in another country, have a full standby system which is ready to start processing as soon as something goes wrong in the region 1, the active region. This allows us to provide very, very high availability of eDiscovery review software, so you don't have to worry that servers go down and you have a very, very expensive team of specialized lawyers waiting, doing nothing before they can continue doing their review again. Okay, just an overview. How can we deal with Office 365? Very easy. What we can do is if you have a PST download, then we can directly ingest that in the ZyLAB eDiscovery platform for, of course, processing, analytics, analyzing it, and all kind of other advanced features, of which I'll show you a couple of them here. What we can also do is we can directly collect from a user mailbox. And then when we collect, we don't have to collect the entire mailbox, but we can do queries, we can take selections, we can look at particular types of documents and then do a very focused, very targeted collection. Of course, you can also do a pre-selection in Office 365 using the in-place eDiscovery, and then we directly collect from those discovery mailboxes. Or what Rachi just said, you can use the most advanced eDiscovery functionality in Office 365, including the machine learning and predictive coding, and then use that selection and load that into the ZyLAB platform. That's especially handy because Microsoft doesn't support all the file formats, and there's certain functionality that's not available in the Microsoft platform or yet. And what we can do is then what happens in E5 is that all the data Microsoft cannot deal with will automatically be exported to the review tool to make sure that data is not missed. Now, we can pick up that data and then we can apply advanced analytics and machine learning on those very specific data files. But you can take the majority of the data out of the system by using the advanced eDiscovery E5 plan.
Jan, would that include PDFs that haven't been OCR'd?
Yes, right now, but what I understood from Rachi is that there will be some auto OCR functionality very soon, right?
That is correct. So today, any data that does not have text available to it, or that, for example, let's say it's encrypted outside of Office 365, so we're not able to index it and search it, you're able to go ahead and segregate that data out as being unsearchable, and it's flagged in that way, so that way by the time it gets to ZyLAB, then they are able to perform their additional processing against that data.
Very good. Thank you.
But there's also going to be other file types, like for instance sound files or video files, or for instance kind of obscure bitmaps, or legacy electronic file formats, old Lotus files, or even WordPerfect. You don't want to know how many lawyers still work with WordPerfect, and so there's still a lot of this legacy data around, especially if you do an eDiscovery on data that has been retained for a long time, or certain type of archives that have to deal with either FDA or FAA compliance. Sometimes data has to be kept for 20, 30 years in those cases, and you see a lot of old file formats. So that's another way. Another thing that we can do, because like I said, one of the problems with eDiscovery is that you never know what kind of data you have, and processing can cause a lot of problems. Processing can also, you can also run into errors and into technical problems, or maybe you have corrupt files maybe somebody sends you a corrupt attachment in your email. Then all those files are going to cause problems. Now, in some of the environments that our clients are, they don't have time to deal with this. They want to be able to really quickly do a discovery, collect the data, immediately search it and start reviewing it. So they don't have time to do processing, even if the processing is almost totally automated as we do in ZyLAB. Now, in such a case, what you can do is you can do a continuous sync of selected mailboxes. You shouldn't do this for all your mailboxes, but just like the people that are being e-discovered like every week, and you can take a sync of their user mailboxes, process it. Whenever you deal with errors, deal with it at that moment in time, not under the pressure of an e-discovery during a long holiday weekend. And then also review the data and automatically already take out privileged information. So you don't have to review certain privileged documents over and over again. And we call that our preservation vault. And it's a very powerful application where this continuous sync of the user mailboxes will give you all that information. Or what you can do a direct collection from document libraries in file shares or in SharePoint, and then also integrate that information. Now, this is everything that we can do with Office 365. Like I said, in the next couple of 10 years, we'll probably have to deal with the fact that we live in a hybrid environment where part of the resources are still on premises. Now, for those resources, we can also collect directly from those resources, and then we can run everything in the Microsoft Azure environment. That's where we do the processing, that's where we do the deduplication, that's where we do the review, the predictive coding, topic search, topic analysis, etc. And then you can do the productions of only the relevant data from that Azure environment, and you don't have to download or deal with these huge amounts of data that are now floating around in an e-discovery because different types of the e-discovery process are done at different locations, and over people have to justify disclosures from one system to the other. So in this case, when you're dealing with Office 365 and ZyLAB, you just have to deal with two systems that are tightly integrated together. Like Rachi said, there's extensive log files that keep track of how data flows from one system to the other, so you don't have to worry about inclusion or exclusion reports. And because it all runs in Azure, the Azure environment for Microsoft is always very close to the Office 365 environment of an organization. So you know for sure that you have very, very fast bandwidth between the O365 and the Azure environment. So you're going to have really fast and really top performance of these systems. So what can we collect from various other sources? File shares, forensic images from other products, very important, especially in criminal investigations, databases, content management systems, other cloud environments. Our users can also program their own collectors in our system, should you have your own special data location. So that gives you great flexibility to do direct collections. We can also upload data directly into our system. This is what we do a lot with what we call our self-service SaaS solution for smaller investigations or smaller organizations that don't want to deal with the management of an entire very large e-discovery platform. We allow them to upload all kinds of data directly into either the ZyLAB SaaS environment or the SaaS environment of one of our partners that we run, or into your own ZyLAB software if you are a large organization that you may have deployed in your own Azure environment. And then as soon as the data gets into that location in the cloud, it will automatically start being processed. We do all kinds of analytics. We did a whole webinar on the different types of analytics we do, and within a couple of minutes you can start doing your review, and then data will continue to flow in parallel as it's being processed. And the more resources you allocate in Azure for processing, the faster it's done. But we've had many clients that uploaded like overnight 250 gigabytes, and then next early morning they could start reviewing the entire data set with a group of lawyers. And that's very important. As a law firm or as an investigator, you want to make sure that the time between the identification of the data and the mailboxes that you are interested in and the moment that you can start reviewing is as short as possible. And that's what we can provide with this solution. What we do is we do a very deep processing. One of the things at ZyLAB where we're very proud of is that if there's some data in there, we'll make sure that this is searchable. This is also why organizations such as the UN War Crimes Tribunals, a lot of other high-profile government agencies use our technology, because they know that if it's in there somewhere, if you turn on all the bells and whistles in the ZyLAB processing, you will definitely find it. This is because we support more than 700 electronic file formats. So we can extract text from more than 700 electronic file formats, including meta information. But we can also deal with compound and compressed formats. So if you have an email and an attachment, or you have an Excel file in a PowerPoint file, or a bitmap in a PowerPoint file, we will make every individual component searchable. We'll deal with all of the embedded objects, and if they're not searchable, we'll make them searchable by either using OCR for 200 or 300 languages, including automatic language detection, or we will make audio files searchable, so you can also search on the sound component of the video. But this is how it looks. So if you have an email with an Excel file or a zip file with a PDF or some kind of strange bitmap, we'll make it searchable, and we also keep the document families together in email trails, so you keep the full overview. The embedded audio search is really great. What we do is we automatically make any type of sound file searchable, and then you can, in your software, just select whether you want to search for audio or for text, and we will automatically translate the words you key in into phonemes, and then we'll do a fuzzy match and find the documents that have a certain hit. And then you see the hit also here in the red bars, as you can see on the screen, making it directly or allowing you to jump directly to the next hit. A couple of other things we've done is that we do a lot of early case assessments. We're building email threads, we're doing dedupping and near deduplication. Also on files that are not exactly the same. We can do deduplication on the entire content of a file, or just on meta information or selected metadata fields. We can do advanced text mining and data enrichment, allowing for semantic analysis and natural language processing. We do auto-classification and topic modeling. And all of those are integrated in a very easy to use. All of this work is being done at the processing time. You can imagine that if you have a lot of data, you need a lot of processing power, and that's why Azure is so powerful. And then we will see entire email threads. What you see here actually is really interesting. If you see these red entries here, it means that some of the messages are missing. So you may not have collected information from all of the custodians. There's some conversations here, 2 emails. We don't know from whom, and we don't know what it was, but they're missing between here and there. Of course, we do hit highlighting and everything you can expect from a company being in business for search for almost 30 years. And then we have a lot of review accelerators. The review is still the most expensive part of an eDiscovery process. And by reducing the information, either in Office 365 by using the E5 functionality or by using the ZyLAB functionality in the processing, you save a lot of money. But there's still a lot of data ending up in review, and as our data collections continue to grow, so do the cost of review. So what we've done is we've created a lot of tools to sell the review process by using dashboards, by using advanced workflow tagging. We have a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, also known as predictive coding for assisted review. We do automatic machine translation, so you don't have to send all files to a translator, but you can immediately assess the content. And a very, very powerful feature, especially in the context of the upcoming European global data protection regulations, is redaction. We have a functionality to not just redact manually, but also to automatically redact based on patterns and text mining searches. And we can even redact information and replace it with a synonym or with an alias. So you can refer to John Smith as like Mr. E or Mr. B or Mr. C or witness 1 or witness 2. And instead of having to do this all manually, we can do this automatically and then burn that in a variety of different ways, including like what the exemption or redaction reason, if you want to, including the generation of redaction reports, if that's necessary in FOIA or in eDiscovery. And then, of course, we can do production, all kinds of industry standard production formats. All right, here's a couple of overviews. There's just some screenshots of the different tagging. You can easily tag documents, or you can tag just one email, or you can tag the entire email conversation or the current branch of an email. A lot of flexibility here. We provide the full overview. This is our facet dashboard, where you can see and get an idea of everything that's in the system. And you can immediately assess, okay, how many documents are there per custodian, per document type, or per email address or email domain. Anything that we can derive through our text mining and analytics, which is like, you know, hundreds of different semantic categories. We can you can set up a system so that you can see different facets and different pies, and then they're all clickable. Of course, you can click on them, and then you go immediately to the documents. You can review them, and it really helps you to excel the process. Same with machine translation. No need to speak Chinese or to involve Chinese translators. Our software does it at a very high speed, 5,000 pages per core per hour. And we can also integrate, we have proprietary software that you can run on premises, but we can also integrate with Bing and other translation services. Here's the auto redaction, just a screenshot. I'm going a little fast now, so because we're running up to the top of the hour, where you can see different redactions, and in this case, they're also replaced by different aliases. This is not only interesting or like essential for eDiscovery, but also for FOIA and public records requests. You know, dealing with exemptions is the most expensive part of the review of before public records are disclosed. And if you forget to redact something, it can create huge damage for your organization. It's the same with M&A. If you build up a virtual data room and you're disclosing information to various potential buyers, you don't want to show them everything right away. So you want to disclose it in different layers. That's where redaction can be very important. Or if you have a data room and you have to deal with European citizens, you have to redact all the personal information because you cannot disclose information unless it's redacted. Now, redaction is going to be one of the huge costs that organizations will have to deal with in the next decade with all the upcoming privacy regulations, not only in Europe, but also in states like Massachusetts and California in the US. And redaction is very, very important, and we can save organizations tremendous amounts of time and money there. So, in resume, what we can do is we can run our software in the Azure environment, which will give you the ability to identify, preserve, process, analyze, and review data. And it's a full eDiscovery solution that will take benefit from the Azure environment, so you can very, very effectively deal with large data lakes. We've always said Azure is the new appliance. It's very easy to deploy software. Our software will also be available through the Microsoft Marketplace, so you can just install it from a number of images. You can select the machines you want. You can select what architecture you want, how many cores, how much memory, and then you can spin on and spin off machines, and it will give you the most cost-effective architecture for eDiscovery. We can integrate with 365, so whatever remains in 365, and that before you, and then you want to do the review, or you want to do additional processing on formats not recognized in 365, or you want to combine it with other resources, we can collect all that, and then you keep everything in the cloud, and you just process and review in the cloud everything, and you just have to produce what's relevant. And then, of course, we can deal with Microsoft on-premises solutions, SharePoint, Exchange, file shares, and several legacy or content management systems, databases that are out there. And you can either do that proactively and process it and make it eDiscovery ready, or you do it whenever you need that data. So that's it, Mary.
Oh, all right. So I have one follow-up question from a participant about analytics in Office 365, and they're asking very specifically on three things: predictive coding, email threading, and concept clustering.
So the answer to all three is yes. As part of the advanced eDiscovery analytics, it includes near-tube email threading, predictive coding, as well as themes, which is the conceptual clustering, which will not just give you the primary clusters, but also break it down into all the different topics that are existing within individual documents or units.
Very good. Very good. And I see no more questions coming in, so oh wait, one more. Are there any plans in the near future to develop ZyLAB solutions targeted at smaller organizations?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question actually. Yes, we already have that. We have a lot of small clients that just have like 10 gigabytes or 20 gigabyte data sets, which we consider small, or 5 gigabytes, and then that's exactly where we use our SaaS solutions, and we provide that in Western Europe and in North America, and then yeah, that's perfectly suited for smaller organizations. You will have access to all of our technology, and you have all of our automation and all of our advanced technology, but you just pay per user and per gigabyte per month, and you only pay for what you use, and it's the perfect solution for small organizations.
Excellent. And another question, how do I limit which file types go into Office 365 relevance?
So for that, today, you would basically execute your searches, and you would determine what the data that you are placing into the advanced eDiscovery analytics for the relevance breakdown. In general terms, what we find is because the data types within Office 365 are generally user-created data, we don't have as many issues around things like needing to do mist filtering or things like that. In general, if there's obviously some specific things that someone wants to discuss, more than happy to discuss specific scenarios. But that's in general terms, that's how you would limit the data.
Thank you. Okay, I see no more questions, so I want to thank Rachi and Jan, and thank you very much for a wonderful webinar. We will post the recording, and we'll do a little editing on it for the beginning. I want to thank everybody for their kind attention and persistence through the little glitch we had in the beginning. Jan and Rachi, fantastic webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Rachi.
Thanks, all.